mostly excite the electronic levels. But though it doesn't excite the electronic levels, it can still excite the phonon coupled levels with a very weak probability. Okay? So as a result, what happens is the incident light will excite the phonon levels here. Because the phonon level excitation is very weak, they slowly build up population here. When they slowly build up population, once there is enough population, then the next photon will pick it up from here to here. Then sometimes there will be relaxation, then there will be coupling between this and this. This will go up here, that will come down here. So then the population this will build up to a large extent. There will be enhanced absorption, then there will be enhanced emission. So when you measure the lifetime of this level, it slowly builds up and then suddenly it jumps up. And the time involved here is very large when compared to the lifetime of these levels involved. Because these lifetimes may be in microseconds or milliseconds. This will be several seconds. It slowly builds up and then suddenly jumps up. So this is another phenomena that is used in building efficient lasers. So those are the three popular mechanisms used in building upconversion lasers. As I mentioned earlier, we use crystals, glasses, fibers, right? So if you use a crystal like this, what we do is we shine light into the material using a lens here. When you use the lens, typically you focus it to a beam size of maybe 50 microns. So here, well, inside it happens 2 photon, 3 photon excitation, then they emit light. When they emit light, they emit in all directions, 4 pi diameter. But we collect only a small fraction of the lens. So the amount of light you collect is a small fraction of the light that is emitting in all directions. So effectively your efficiency will be less here. Or if you make a laser inside, of course it will be transmitted in this direction, this difference work. On the other hand, if you use a fiber, for launching light through one end, so for light that's emitted, there are only two options. It can go out this way or it can go back this way. So half of the light at least you will collect this way. So your efficiency is going to be high. At the same time, you can have several meters length. So your interaction length is also very large. Here you are dealing with only a centimeter, or maybe if you are very smart, you can go a little bit longer. But otherwise, you talk of small materials here, maybe a few centimeters, but here you are talking of several meters. So your interaction length is also long. So as a result, the efficiency in fibers is going to be very high. So some of the mechanisms which you don't see in crystals, you see here. On top of that, these fibers, they have very narrow core, only few microns. Okay? As a result, you will see all these multi-phonon processes with high efficiency. So that's the reason why the fibers are popular candidates for building up conversion lasers. So the CD. So in the beginning, when the CDs were introduced in the market, their storage capacity is about 650 megabytes. So what is it that's limiting there? See what they were using is the 800 nanometer diode laser. So when I use the diode, you focus it. When you focus it, so there is a formula that relates to the size. What is the spot size? That is given by this formula. Is the focal length, this is lambda of the light that is used here. This is the size. Okay, size means the beam size here. So if you change this lambda from 800 to 400 nanometer, here it may size may decrease by a factor of 2, but when you take the spot area, it's meaning a lambda square. So there is a factor of 4 coming into the picture. As a result, the amount of information you can store will increase by a factor of 4. So that is the advantage of using Blu-ray displays. So that's why we have most of the plays which will be coming in the market hereafter will be Blu-ray displays. That's what we have. Blu-ray may be used about 400 nanometer. So that is the advantage of that. So that's the reason why in the beginning people were developing upconversion lasers using this technique. But as I mentioned earlier, nowadays you have gallium nitride diodes which are in the market. So you don't need all the fiber and other stuff. Okay? Now they are replacing the same thing. Whatever was done with fibers and all with a diode. That's what is in the market nowadays. And but still people use these upconversion lasers because you can use them for a variety of other purposes. This may not be the only one. So initially they thought this is a big market. So there is something called infrared detectors. That's what you need. Most of the people doing astronomical research, they look for infrared radiation. Most of the detectors they use, you have to cool them to low temperatures to minimize noise. Okay? That's mostly thermal noise. Some of them you need to cool them to liquid nitrogen temperature some, because one of the popular detection technique cadmium telluride, that's used for 10 micron radiation. So you want to get rid of that liquid nitrogen because that's not convenient. Still, people, some of these astrophysical instruments, they do carry liquid nitrogen. For example, last year we have Jan Madden. One of his telescopes it carried liquid helium. So, but it didn't last very long. After a few months, it ran out. The whole thing got stopped. So people still take liquid. But there is alternate schemes people are trying all the time. So the other day Dr. Lal was telling TGS, that's one of the materials people use for infrared detection. But the problem is, if you use it at room temperature, the sensitivity is not good. Still they are using, for example, use FTIR instruments, they still use TGS. But they don't detect peak signals because the noise problem. So you need alternate techniques to avoid the noise. So this is one of the techniques proposed by a person called Bloomberg and Lambert. To take an ion, Bloomberg is one of the Nobel laureates in physics. Okay? You take an ion that has 3 levels, you shine infrared light here from here to here. Then you shine visible light from here to here between these 2 levels. Then it emits UV or visible depending on this energy. Okay? So basically what you are doing is you are detecting this light emitted from level 3 to 1. You see light emitted from level 3 to 1 only when you have this level IR light, infrared light. Okay? If you block this infrared light, you don't see this because you need this step of excitation. So basically whenever you have infrared light, you are getting this UV light. So UV light you can detect with photometric tube. They are cheap, they are very efficient. You can even detect single photon. So they are that efficient. So that's the technique he proposed. So later on people are trying to find a commercial device. People are, once we say demonstrate in the lab, that's not enough. You need something that's more efficient. So that's where people are still struggling. So we tried some here. What you do is instead of doing this, you may have this kind of system. You shine visible light here between levels 1 and 2. So you shine infrared light that will take it from here to here, then you see this light coming through. But means you block this infrared light, you don't see you. So that's the kind of thing we need here in few different systems. Things like that you can do. So this is an important thing, it's better you know. So you may not see a commercial device sometime, hopefully in your lifetime. Okay. So you can do it in several different ways. This concept was developed by a spectroscopist in Ottawa, Canada, where I happened to work later on as a postdoc. Okay? So this you can happen due to population rearrangement among hyperfine levels. This is a high resolution spectroscopy technique. So basically the technique is also called hole burning mechanism. Okay? So there is also due to some saturation mechanism that happens. The holes you can burn in several different ways. One is called photochemical hole burning. That happens whenever there is a charge migration from one atom to another atom. And then there is chemistry taking place. Or it can be photophysical, that means you shine light on the material. Whatever atom you are exciting, its environment will change a little bit, then it becomes photophysical. So one thing is in chemistry there is cis-trans isomerism. That's one of those. Okay, and you can also have other things. I will show you some examples. These holes, in addition to that, there is population rearrangement. Okay, so that's our third mechanism. So these 3 mechanisms are in the frequency domain. Again, you can burn holes in time domain too. Okay, I work in the frequency domain. So I will show you that example. And This hole burning can be a transient hole or a persistent hole. Transient hole means it lasts only for a fraction of a second, depending on the levels involved and how fast they relax. Earlier I told you relaxation times. Depending on that, in the transient phenomena, hole lasts for a fraction of a second, either millisecond, microsecond, or nanosecond, depending on the levels involved. In that case, if you want stored memory, you need to refresh it every millisecond or microsecond, but that's not convenient, right? Then you need something that holds the information for a long time. Then you have something called persistent hole burning that will store the information for a long time. So it lasts for a long time. Some of the materials which we made, they store information for 5-6 hours. Up to it probably lasts for longer than that. I will show you some examples. It's basically developed by high resolution spectroscopists. So they use the high resolution shown below. Okay?
If you might like to say a few words about hole, but not a physical hole.
No, it's not a physical hole. I'm going to explain how it is.
Yeah.
I will come back. So this hole burning, you can do it in inorganic materials. This is where we did. We burn holes in crystals, glasses and color centers. You can do it in organic diodo, polymers, glasses, you name it. You can do it in organic. You can do it in biological materials. You can do it in every possible material. You can burn hole. Because hole burning can happen due to photochemical phenomena, photophysical phenomena, and due to population rearrangement among hydrogen levels. So you can't eliminate anything. In everything you can burn hole.
When you speak of holes, are you talking about the same holes that Ashford mentioned when the electrons are moving? Is that the same time?
I will show you. It's a little different, but I will show you. So what is the drawback? It works at low temperature. That's the drawback. So now you say here is good, I have a high capacity storage medium, but you need a liquid helium cryostat. Nobody will buy. That's the problem right now. Okay? This will store a lot of information, but you need this cryogenics. That's the current problem. So what we did is we tried to burn holes at room temperature using materials we made in the lab. Okay, I will show you some. And our aim was to understand the hole burning mechanism and how to improve the hole burning efficiency. That means you can't take a 1 watt laser to burn a hole. You need to burn with milliwatt lasers. Okay? So we tried to burn material, make material that will facilitate that. We did burn some holes with milliwatt lasers. So that means at the same time you also increase the hole density also. See, anything you do nowadays, you have flash memory. In a small stick you can store lots of information, right? You need to beat that. So at the same time you have to beat that at room temperature. You can do it at liquid nitrogen or liquid helium. And also you have to do this with diode lasers. You can go with a big laptop or unit. All those things are involved before you do commercialization. Otherwise, the lab, people did store lots of information and they retrieved it. There was a person by the name Ravi Katsu. Okay. He worked in SRI International, California. He stored all kinds of information in crystals and he demonstrated. The economy finally, I don't know, he left that lab and now he's somewhere else. Okay. Because when you work in a private company, he has to get his own money. He did that for a long time and the economy, well, I don't know, he changed his lab. Now he moved into something else. Okay, I'm going to explain the physics behind. Earlier I mentioned we remember homogeneous line width. I'm going to explain. Let's say you have a crystal something like this. Okay.